Good Tuesday morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us here at Gulf Coast Weather Solutions this morning. Not much really going on in the Tamco Live Doppler radar. We see some very isolated showers moving into the southwest coastline, and that actually has fell apart already. But we should see a little bit more later this morning, mainly this afternoon. Coverage not as high as what we've seen the last couple of days, just going to get up to 20 to 30% coverage. Temperature is really going to be kind of the biggest story. If we do look and zoom out, we can see a little bit more moisture and some showers moving into the New Orleans over there towards Mobile, Alabama this morning. We just see a little bit more moisture, but other than that, it is pretty quiet on the radar this Tuesday morning. Satellite and radar, you can see we've got high pressure that's building in the northern Gulf, and this is going to continue building the rest of the week, and especially this weekend. It's not going to make us 100% rain-free, but it is going to make our temperatures even hotter the rest of the week. Middle to upper 90s heat index, getting pretty hot, especially this weekend. You can see in the mid to upper levels a little bit of that dry air starting to kind of mix in. This is one of the reasons that we're getting more to an isolated rain pattern versus scattered and numerous like we've seen kind of the last couple of days. Looking at those current temperatures, already into the mid-80s down towards the coast, low to mid-80s, Galveston at 82, a little bit further towards the north of the I-10 corridor, 78 in Houston, 76 in Beaumont, 75 in Lake Charles, and then the further north that you go, we're still pretty warm over there into the middle to upper 70s north of the I-10 corridor, and thanks to our sponsor of Silsby Ford, Get You One, letting us know what the temperatures are doing currently this morning. Now, we're going to continue seeing those temperatures getting into realistically, the middle 90s. A lot of areas will get into the low 90s along the I-10 corridor down towards the south. But if you go towards Houston, Conroe, you can get into the upper 90s, if not near the 100-degree mark. We do have a chance for some relief from the heat with that 20 to 30% coverage, less coverage what we've seen the last couple of days. And we're realistically going to see more of the dry air kind of mixing into the mid to upper levels realistically kind of the next couple of days. Because again, we're going to get more into an isolated pattern. We're starting it today, but we're going to kind of continue that the rest of the week and especially through the weekend. So thanks to Modern Concrete letting us know what's going on today. Not much going on in the Gulf or tropics wise. In fact, the Gulf looks shut down the next 7 days, and the Caribbean looks pretty quiet right now. In fact, we've got very strong wind shear going into the Caribbean. So even if any type of wave was to go into the Caribbean, it's called the Caribbean Graveyard because of how strong the wind shear is. Now, there are 3 areas that we're watching, but we're really just watching this one area shaded in red. This has a high chance of developing within the next 3 to 5 days. It has a 70% chance of developing within the next 7 days. By the time it gets a little bit closer to the Leeward Islands, here we are by Wednesday, Thursday, and here we are by Friday. This is when this could become a tropical storm. Maybe just a tropical depression. It depends on how much dry air can this mix out and how much of the wind shear can it deal with. But the further west that it gets, this looks to get very close to the Leeward Islands that honestly does need the rain. They are in a big time drought. They don't need anything very very organized. They do need the rain. Now, the good news is very strong wind shear near the Caribbean, especially the Leeward Islands. So the closer it gets to the islands, I mean, maybe this is a tropical storm. I don't see this becoming a hurricane. Even if it is, I just don't think this is going to be a very, tight and compacted one. Wind shear is going to give this a very, hard time. What I want us to notice is, we talked about this yesterday, is that this has 2 options. Option number 1 is this continues to go westward because of this high pressure ridge that builds over the Gulf. This will allow this to go further west, going into the Caribbean. At that point, I have no idea how this would survive the Caribbean because the Caribbean Graveyard with the wind shear is way too strong for this. The second option was it finds a weakness between these 2 areas of high pressure. At that point, if it finds this area of weakness, this is when it could try to get a little bit better organized, but even then, I think that this is going to be on somewhat kind of the struggle bus. So if this gets into the Caribbean, it's nothing to worry about in my eyes. This thing will get shredded. Even if it tries to find a way to go through these islands and then sneak towards, let's say Miami, Florida, this would realistically be just another tropical wave bringing some showers and thunderstorms to these regions. There's so much wind shear, I just don't see how this is an issue for the Caribbean or even the Gulf. The only option for this to actually be a little bit organized is it finding that weakness and going further north and then curving away from the United States. We'll keep watching it, but as of right now, I'm just not too intrigued by this being an issue at all. The Caribbean looks pretty well, shut down because of that wind shear. But again, we'll keep watching it. One thing that we're going to be watching realistically the rest of the week, and this does play a role on that tropical wave, is this area of high pressure that's building into the Gulf. Look how strong and look how large it's going to get. By the end of this week, especially this weekend, this high pressure ridge is very strong, very large. It takes over our region. Again, I don't think we'll be rain free. We still have 5 to 10% coverage off and on the next 5 to 7 days you can find. In fact, Friday, we actually have a chance we could see a little bit better chance for rain. In fact, let me kind of rewind this and go back to Friday. So here we are on Friday. That ridge will actually be a little bit further towards the north here. But again, this will keep us dry, limited. But notice the flow is still bringing in some of that southern flow. So on Friday, we can still get 20 to 30% coverage Friday and into Saturday. So again, I think we're still going to be very limited on the rain. We're just not going to see 40, 50, 60% coverage anytime soon. Realistically, we're going to be 20% or less the rest of the weekend through the weekend. And we're going to get pretty hot. Middle 90s to upper 90s is looking pretty likely. And again, let me zoom out real quick. I know I'm probably taking a little bit too long on this, but showing this area of high pressure building in, this is where that tropical wave would be at that time. So let's say that this ridge grabs that wave. It would shove it further westward into the Caribbean graveyard. And I just don't see how this survives. The only chance for this to get organized is realistically Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. As it approaches the Leeward Islands, it has to find that weakness, has a chance to get a little bit better organized. At that point, it would go away from the United States. Let's try to play devil's advocate and say this comes closer to our region. Wind shear just seems way too strong for this to survive. But we'll continue to keep watching it. Other than that, though, high pressure ridge is building into our region, so we're going to start seeing the rain kind of just continue to drop off. 30% coverage today, 20%, 10 to 20% coverage on Wednesday, less than 10% coverage on Thursday, and then realistically, we're around 10 to 20% coverage or less the rest of the weekend through the weekend. That high pressure realistically is going to bring those temperatures more into the middle 90s, and for a lot of areas, especially out west, into the upper 90s. Today, we've got that 20 to 30% coverage. Majority of us, if you do get the rain, I think this is just going to be a quarter to up to a half an inch, but there can be some isolated storms. 1 to 2 inches of rain still possible. We've got the moisture, the heat of the day. And some of these, for example, like you see towards Houston and Baytown, some of these heavier storms, possibly towards Beaumont, getting into Lumberton and Buna. And you can see it down anywhere else. I'm just showing you that there is a potential for these very isolated storms to be a little bit heavier than other storms that we're seeing. But other than that, coverage is not too high today, especially how it was yesterday. So we're a lot less coverage than yesterday. Temperatures getting into the low to mid 90s, out towards the west into the upper 90s. Your only relief from the heat is that 20 to 30% coverage. And then by tonight, we lose the heat of the day, we lose the storms. Temperatures today, though, again, just kind of mentioned it. We're going to see them get into the middle to upper 90s, especially out towards the west. You're going to have the 20 to 30% coverage, mainly this afternoon for some showers and thunderstorms. Big story we'll see kind of the next couple of days, the wet bulb global temperature from UIL, sponsored by Switch Electric, going to get pretty much into the upper 80s to near 90 degrees. And again, depending on your field conditions, you could get even hotter than that, so we could see some breaks. Again, this is new from the UIL. They're watching this. And then overnight tonight, we're going to be into the low to mid 80s. That is very warm down there towards the coast. And then upper 70s along the I-10 corridor, and then middle to upper 70s for the rest of the region. So the air conditioners will continue working overtime. And then our 7-day forecast for Southeast Texas, this is really our best coverage of rain today. 30% coverage, and then we start getting pretty limited on the rain coverage. You realistically could say that we're getting mostly hot and mostly dry the rest of the week and through the weekend as high pressure builds in, but not 100% rain-free. We still have a chance for some moisture in the heat of the day to at least give us a 10 to 20% coverage at times. Same thing for Southwest Louisiana. Best coverage of rain is today, and then notice those temperatures are getting back into the middle to almost, for several regions, could get into the upper 90s. So we're going to see the temperatures get a little bit warmer the rest of the week, and especially this weekend as high pressure builds in. And if you have not yet, please go download the free Gulf Coast Weather Solutions app. It will keep you updated around the clock. So we'll keep watching the tropics, but thanks again for tuning in to the Tuesday morning show. I'm not too concerned about the tropics. Again, we'll keep watching it. But one thing we will watch is the temperatures are getting hotter the next 5 to 7 days. I think this is realistically going to be our last big hot stretch because we're getting closer to the end of August. I know it's hard to believe, but as we start getting into end of August and September, we start seeing, less sunlight hours. We start seeing more fronts start coming into our region more middle to end of September. So we're starting to get away from our hottest months, our hottest time frames. I think that this weekend, this is going to be probably our last big hot stretch. So y'all have a good Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see y'all again tomorrow morning on the Wednesday morning show, but we'll still have posts throughout the day on Facebook, YouTube, and on the Gulf Coast Weather Solutions app. Have a wonderful Tuesday, and thanks again for tuning in.
Gulf Coast Weather Solutions is sponsored by...
We don't know what the weather is going to be like around here. I do get really anxious during storms.
That's why they chose HailGuard. When performance leads, confidence follows. Backed by the first and only asphalt shingle system with a hail warranty.
That just gives us more peace of mind.
This is the only asphalt product on the market that has the manufacturer warranty targeting the hail damage, and it gives me a lot of confidence as a contractor.
Engineered for enhanced impact performance. Built to protect homes and reputations. HailGuard shingles. Built for hail.